All right, so we're going to jump into this really fascinating piece by Benedict Singleton. He calls it Maximum Jailbreak. I mean, with a title like that, you just know this is going to be something else, right? You've probably felt it. After being quiet for decades, that dream of going to the stars, it's back in a big way. We're seeing rockets launching all the time. Rovers are kicking up dust on Mars. There's this feeling that anything's possible again. It almost feels like we're watching a sequel to that first golden age. But this time feels different, doesn't it? It's not just about, national pride or pure science. Now it's this chaotic free-for-all. We've got billionaire joyrides, reality TV shows casting for one-way tickets to Mars, and companies dead set on mining asteroids. The why behind it all is getting really, really weird. So if it's not just one clear thing, what's really going on here? What's the deep-down logic, the single thread connecting all of this madness? What is the core impulse that's trying to push all of humanity off this rock? That's the big question we're going to try and answer in this explainer. Okay, so before we can figure out where all this is going, we've got to take a step back. We need to look at how we got here in the first place. So the 20th century, right? That gave us this huge single vision of space travel. You think of the flag on the moon, that iconic NASA logo. It felt like a project for the whole world. But then, it all just kind of fizzled out. The Challenger disaster for sure cast a huge shadow. And now, the dream is back. But as you can see, it's been replaced by what the source calls a riot of tactics. It's totally fragmented, it's commercialized, and honestly, it's a bit of a bizarre scramble for the stars. All right, so to really get a handle on today's chaos, the source says we need to hit rewind. And I mean way back, because the intellectual architect behind this whole thing is probably the last person you'd ever expect. So you've got this picture, right? The modern vision, sleek rockets, tech billionaires, spotless labs. And then you have the guy who apparently started it all. And it's this guy, Nikolai Fedorov, a super strict, super religious Russian librarian from the 1800s. I mean, this guy barely ate, owned next to nothing, and didn't even wear a coat in the Russian winter. It's a crazy contrast, right? But believe it or not, his ideas are kind of the secret blueprint for all of this. And this quote right here, it cuts straight to the heart of what he believed. For Fedorov, nature wasn't this beautiful thing to be protected. No, it was an enemy, a cold, uncaring force that always leads to death and decay. And he thought humanity's one and only job was to fight back. So, how in the world do you fight back against nature itself? Well, that question is what leads us into the wild, radical philosophy he created, which eventually got the name cosmism. The core of his whole philosophy was this idea he called the common task. And it was a project for every single person on Earth. And it was incredibly ambitious. Goal number 1, conquer death. Not just stop it from happening, but actually resurrect everyone who had ever died. Goal number 2, escape Earth entirely and expand out into the universe. And for him, you couldn't have one without the other. Now, this is the key. For Fedorov, the enemy was something he called blind nature. And this wasn't just, lions and tigers and bears. It was anything that put a thoughtless limit on us. Gravity, for example, pins us to the ground. Death, obviously, ends everything. He even saw our own instincts, our drive for sex, our desire to consume, as just nature's dumb programming telling us what to do. The common task was a declaration of total war on all of it. But this idea of escape, it's not just about building spaceships, and it definitely didn't start with Fedorov. It's actually based on a logic that's much, much older, a fundamental logic, the logic of the trap. Think about it. How do you actually escape a system that you are completely inside of? You can't just punch gravity in the face. You have to be way smarter than that. The source calls this cunning intelligence, and you can think of it like the art of the hustle or maybe jujitsu. It's not about overpowering the system. It's about knowing the rules so well that you can bend them, using the system's own energy and momentum to get what you want. The anthropologist Alfred Gell puts this perfectly. A good hunting trap, he says, works because it understands how an animal behaves, what it wants, where it runs, and it turns that exact behavior into the thing that catches it. It's a lethal parody. In a way, a trap is the ultimate display of cunning intelligence. So this gives us a kind of universal blueprint for any escape, any jailbreak. First, you spot the trap. Let's say Earth's gravity. Then you study its rules. After that, you build a countertrap, like a rocket, that uses other rules of nature, like combustion, to turn the first trap's rules on their head. And this just creates a never-ending cycle. Escaping one trap just shows you the next one you're in, which forces you to keep innovating forever. Now, this whole logic of escaping traps has a really profound and honestly kind of unsettling consequence. It's something that even Fedorov himself maybe didn't fully see. Just let that sink in for a second. In the very act of escaping and figuring out the rules of the trap and building a way out, the thing escaping has to change. It's impossible for it to stay the same. The source brings this home with an incredibly powerful example. It says that slaves in the French colonies had a term for escaping: stealing one's own corpse. To even plan an escape, you had to see yourself the way the master saw you, as property, an object, a corpse. And the person who eventually got free, they weren't the same person who was caught. They were fundamentally changed by that whole process. A true escape, a real jailbreak, it means you have to almost remake yourself from the ground up to get out. And here's the absolute mindbender. We've been doing this from the very beginning. The author calls us the artificial ape. Think about it. We don't have thick fur. We only survived the cold because we invented clothes and shelter. Our entire evolution, standing up straight, developing these amazing hands to make tools, growing these giant brains, it was all driven by this constant process of escaping nature's limits by inventing something new. We are not a natural species. We are and always have been a technological one. So let's pull all these threads together. We have this deep, ancient history of traps and escapes and self-transformation. How does that connect back to the chaotic space race we're seeing today? So this is the big idea. This new scramble for space is the next logical step in this massive species-wide jailbreak. The deep driving force isn't just about finding new frontiers or making money. It's about continuing this ancient project of overcoming the limits of our world and, in the end, the limits of ourselves. And that is the most profound takeaway from all of this. If every escape changes the one who escapes, then the creatures who eventually colonize the solar system, they won't really be us as we know ourselves today. They'll have to become a new kind of human, totally transformed by the tech and the challenges they need to overcome just to survive out there. I just want to leave you with this last thought from William S. Burroughs, because it just nails the whole idea. The maximum jailbreak isn't just about escaping a planet. It's an escape from old ways of thinking, from old identities, maybe even from the very definition of what it means to be human in the first place. It's a journey into the great unknown, both out there and in here.